Most adult family home projects don't blow up because of one big mistake. They blow up because of 10 small, quick changes until your budget and your schedule are no longer predictable. If you're a Washington adult family home provider planning a remodel, a conversion, an addition, or a new build, and you're early enough that decisions still feel flexible, this video is for you. Here's the risk. You build the wrong version of done. And once design gets expensive, you're stuck redesigning, re-permitting, or value engineering under pressure. Today, I'm going to give you a one-page tool. 5 decisions that define done so your team can move fast without reopening the same decisions every week. We're going to do 3 things. We're going to define what scope drift really is. We're going to walk the 5 decisions, and we're going to show you how to use them at 3 checkpoints. So let's get clear on terms, because scope drift gets blamed for everything. Scope drift is not just adding features. Scope drift is changing your definition of success midstream. It's when the project keeps changing what done means. In adult family home projects, that shows up with statements like, let's change the resident mix a little, or we should add 1 more room, or we can move the kitchen later. Maybe we'll operate it differently than we thought. Those sound like small changes, but in adult family homes, layout decisions are tightly connected to staffing, supervision, licensing readiness, and the experience that families have when they walk in your front door. So one change often forces 5 other changes. Here's the predictable math of every project. Early changes are cheap because they're on paper. Late changes are expensive because they touch engineering, permitting, and construction. But in an adult family home, the bigger cost is operational. Late decisions often force compromises that make staffing harder every day. More walking, more interruptions, worse sightlines, and bottlenecks during peak care times. So this isn't about being rigid. It's about being clear enough that your project stays predictable. Teams drift when they don't share a definition of done. And when the team doesn't share done, you get 2 predictable problems. First, you get lots of design churn, lots of motion, little closure. Second, you get decision debt. You delay hard decisions until they come back later with interest. So the goal of this video is simple. Decide the few things that create 80% of clarity, write them down, and assign an owner and a date. That's it. That's the play. This is the tool, the Adult Family Home Definition of Done card, or the DOD5. It's 1 page. It closes 5 decisions early, and it gives you a simple trigger for when something becomes a scope change. If you want the download, it should be linked right below this video. And if you're watching this with a partner, a family member, or a future operator, this tool works best when the people who can change their minds later fill it out together. Decision 1 is licensing target and capacity intent. Done means you can say in 1 sentence, we are building an adult family home for these type of residents, serving these type of needs. Even if the number is a range, if you can't say it, your team can't design to it, because every other decision depends on what you're trying to operate. The most common drift problem here is capacity creep. It starts as, could we add 1 more bedroom? And then it turns into, now the plan has to change, and suddenly budget and schedule aren't predictable anymore. Decision 2 is the resident mix and the care model. Done means you've selected your primary resident profile, who you intend to serve, and you also list who you will not serve. Now this is important. The second part matters. Your non-fit list protects your plan from becoming generic, because generic adult family home design usually means you're trying to serve everyone with a layout that truly fits no one. And when the layout doesn't fit operations, staffing becomes harder and scope changes show up later. If you watch the Adult Family Home 01, then you've already done this using the resident mix to layout tool. If you haven't watched that, that's fine. This decision still stands alone. Just write it in plain language. Decision 3 is a staffing reality and a supervision strategy. Done means you've described staffing on a hard day and night, and you've defined what must be visible from where. So where does your staff spend the most time, and what do they need to see? This is where many projects drift because early planning assumes best case staffing. But predictability comes from designing for the hard day, when someone calls out, when routines stack up, when meds, meals, toileting, and supervision collide. If you do not name staffing early, the building will quietly assume something unrealistic, and later you'll pay for it in operational friction or in redesign. Decision 4 is non-negotiables versus flexible items. Done means you've written 2 lists. First, 5 to 7 non-negotiables you protect for predictability. And second, 5 to 7 flexible items that you're willing to trade if constraints tighten. And then 1 sentence. If budget or schedule tightens, we give up this before we compromise that. That 1 sentence prevents emotional decisions later when time is short and everyone is tired and you're ready for the project to be done. It keeps the project coherent. Decision 5 is project constraints. Now, done means you choose what you will protect when trade-offs show up, right? Budget predictability, schedule predictability, or outcome predictability, meaning operational excellence and staffing sustainability. Then you state your disruption tolerance. Is the home occupied during the work? How much phasing are you willing to absorb? How much disruption can your operation actually handle? If you don't name this, different people on your team will solve for different priorities and your project will drift. Now, how do you use the DoD-5 without turning it into a bureaucracy? Well, you use it at 3 moments. Checkpoint 1 is kickoff. So you complete this before the design runs ahead, because once drawings get detailed, changes get expensive, your designer's going to ask you for a change order. Checkpoint 2 is at schematic sign-off. If your architect or your designer is not having you review and sign off on schematics, you need a new designer. But this is the most important moment where you reread the DoD-5 out loud. If anything changed, you name it as a scope change before it quietly becomes rework. And your third checkpoint is pre-permit. So when your designer is ready to submit the drawings for permits, you want to confirm the 5 decisions are still true. This is where predictability is won. And one simple habit helps a lot. Keep a decision log. 2 lines per meeting. What was decided and who owns the next step. This prevents the classic problem, I thought we had decided that. Now let's talk about a few adult family home drift triggers that show up all the time. 1, a family member joins late and reshapes priorities. Or 2, a contractor proposes easy savings that break operations like moving a bathroom or shrinking a corridor or changing adjacencies that affect supervision. 3, referral sources that push you towards a different resident mix than the plan was designed for. And 4, occupied conversions reveal disruption constraints you didn't name early. The DoD-5 doesn't eliminate these realities. What it does is it contains them. It turns surprises into conscious trade-offs rather than silent redesign. So let's recap. Scope drift is changing done midstream. Late changes cost more financially and operationally. DoD-5 defines done with 5 decisions. licensing and capacity, resident mix, staffing reality and supervision, non-negotiables versus flex items, and the constraints that you'll actually try to protect. If you fill this out before design gets expensive, you protect predictability. The next video, AFH 03, uses your definition of done to choose the right path, remodel versus addition versus new build. If you want one practical next step, download the DoD-5 and fill it out in one sitting, ideally with everyone that can change their minds later. This is the simplest way to reduce surprises and keep your project on track.